this is another, I guess I'll say episode. I'm gonna adjust to calling this a podcast. Uh, another episode of How to Write a Love Poem with myself, Donnie Moreland. This is episode 3, and I am very honored to be joined by, I feel like, an evolutionary organization in, the space of health organizations and health organizing, especially for Black folks, and that would be Brothers in Public Health. Um, so as per usual, I want to give, the guests an opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we'll go into a short reading of the poem, which, by the way, you all could purchase. Finally, My Daddy Never Taught Me How to Write a Love Song, collection of poetry, debut collection of poetry from myself, of which this podcast is a companion to. So very excited for this to be out, and I'll probably have like a solo episode just talking about this. But for right now, I'm excited to talk to these brothers. So I want to give you all an opportunity. We'll go around the room. We'll start with Brother Ethan here. Give a name, which your relationship to the organization is, and then you can kind of pass it around from there. So, Ethan, we get it started.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Donnie, for the opportunity to be on this episode with you. My name is Ethan Daguisan. I'm based out in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I am a BIPH intern.
Solid, solid. All right, we'll pass it over to Mahir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mahir. I'm an environmental specialist and community health worker based in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm pursuing my master's in public health with a concentration in environmental health and global health. And I'm also pursuing my master's in divinity. I'm an aspiring chaplain. I'm a father of two, to a little boy and to a little girl, based in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Miles.
Hey everybody, my name is Myles Davenport. I'm one of the co-founders of Brothers in Public Health. Thank you so much, Donnie, for inviting us to this conversation episode. I'm happy to support. Um, I also am a father. Sorry if you hear any noise, but my 1-year-old son is playing with his little airplane right here. But yeah, I'm really excited to speak with you and hear from the rest of you guys.
No, absolutely. We love to hear the kids. The only reason why I can't hear mine is because, like I said before we started, I want to give her the living room. Like, I'm not going to interrupt her play with my nonsense. So beautiful. And then Winston.
Yeah, thank you so much, Donnie. Definitely a pleasure to be here and, have the bros on. Winston Wright, everyone. I had the pleasure of being a co-founder of Brothers in Public Health as well. Based out of St. Louis and Nashville, originally from Philadelphia. And myself, Miles, two other cats, Omar and Aaron, we really came together probably, I don't know, probably 3, 4 years ago, realistically. It's been a long time, honestly, since we've been working together. But to form this organization and our mission is pretty simple. Is to increase the representation of men of color in public health, right? We all have our education or our expertise and our career experience in the field. We know what the representation looks like, but beyond that, just the ideas, the insights, the brilliance that we can bring to our communities as change agents, for healthier communities is really the vision that we're trying to create. So when we able to find brothers like you doing amazing work, both professionally but also creatively. It's just an amazing opportunity to be able to collaborate. So again, just happy to be here.
And I'm happy to have you all on. Yeah, public health is such a wide-ranging like field, and there's so many wide-ranging conversations around public health. Um, so I'll do my best to keep us in time. We'll shoot for an hour and a half at the most, but I can yap. I'm a known yapper. Um, but as per usual, how we get things started is I like to read, from the book, and extract from the book conversations that have to do with themes relevant to me as a father, as a man, as a Black man, as a single parent, um, you know, and one thing that kind of came up writing the book um, was anger and regulating anger, and anger sort of as an entry point to like emotions, emotional life, how emotional wellness and mental health, how that plays a role in parenting, and then that led me thinking about like the gaps in you know healthcare access, but then but mental health care access, and other programs and policies to support Black men, Black fathers, um, who are sitting at these intersections of deficits in their material conditions, which creates that stress, which creates that those emotional responses in the home that have these outward effects, not just in the home but then in the community. Um, and so all of that was coming to me when I was thinking about like what to put in this book. And I was like, okay, what's my experience? And so, I'm very open about like, okay, there are things that I've been told are not failings in parenting, but the things that I don't like that I've done, right? Hollering, the shouting, and all these things. My kid is just being a kid. Um, and I'm like, okay, what is that? But then thinking about like my upbringing, thinking about like my parents and like my father in particular, and just like the ways in which men in the households like respond to their families, right, to their children, to their spouses, but coming from like the day they've had. um but then also coming from like a lack of support in the community and outside in other capacities. Which just like leaves them it almost like a pressure cooker. Like you feel it. And I know I'm not the first person like I have this conversation, but it was important for me to like bring it up in the book. And so this piece that we're gonna read from um it's called Anger Management, or We All Have Choices, Don't We, Rajee Black. And Rajee Black, I don't have like the specific details in front of me, but I remember the story of Rajee Black. Um, Rajee Black was a brother who like went on Facebook Live um, a few years ago and recorded himself. And this was content warning for anyone in the audience, anyone in the space, but content warning for misogynoir violence. Um, but he recorded himself a few years ago murdering his I believe girlfriend on camera, and then kind of came out that she had a restraining order, either his girlfriend or the mother of his child. Either way, he murdered both of them. And what people found was they both had submitted restraining orders. Or release tried to file for restraining orders and got denied. He had been, talking about like the pressures of child support and the pressures of, the custody battles and all these things, feeling like on the edge. And I just felt that like there's nothing spectacular about him. It's like what he did was uh, irreprehensible. But I think that like brothers exist on a spectrum. Um, that I think that there's a line between like that response and like, the pressure cooker I'm talking about that like a lot of cats that I know, even myself, like find themselves in where they feel like, okay, my back is up against the wall. What do I do for whatever capacity? And then there's that like outward effect in the family and the community. So I'm gonna read from this piece. And it was written for Wendy Black and Tarla Bang, the two that he did murder. Um, Nothing mattered than a mad black daddy when daddy put his fist through the wall to find a wonderland of cats dogging out the same psalms and hymns, and fists bleeding, dirty mouths whining about what was did to them, and who doing what, when, where, and don't push me because I'm close to a bottle of gin and a 44 special. Call it Satan, sickness, or maybe it's a superpower. It can even turn a happy home into a hellscape when Mr. Charlie get to cranking up the heat on a nigga. Brothers hooping, hollering, unholy hostilities. But who keep hope for the children hogtied, playing hide and go seek with your temper? No time for homework when they hunting down the words to say that won't piss you off when the water off. Cell phones ain't been paid, baby mama this, and God bless the children who make it out alive when daddy start up again about what he's owed. He say he won't do it again, but what they say about faith without works. If I worked more on my anger, then maybe today I get to make another choice too. The argument is that it's circumstantial, circumcised, and some boys just born mad, right? Shit, I'm mad today. I'm really just sad today, but that don't read too good when they find your manifesto or her protective orders now, does it? No, sir. There's always just one story. Now, Wendy Black and Tara LeBang ain't got nothing else to say. So much for choices, huh, Rajee? I wish you would have cooled off a bit. Chill the fuck out. But if you were alive, you'd probably say it was too hot. Child support and custody hearings had your trigger finger boiling, blood bubbling against the bone. The rest belongs to your babies who you declared came second to God. Or was it Brownfield Copeland in your burning bush who demanded you take what ain't had no business being took? God bless your children. God bless my daughter when my tongue is hot, when my hands are cold, sick. A honey drop won't cure this. The disease of mad black daddies swinging, making a mess, and looking for something. Looking for mama, looking for love, looking for anything in dirty toddler socks we too depressed to wash. Huey Newton said, God is ignorance, God is wisdom. Still, our tithing envelopes are empty. Our mouths of famine, carrying on, cauliflower eared from our own obscenities. But trust, we'll still swear ain't nobody praying for the fellas before we go all the way up and take the whole world with us. So, say, peace. Um, there's a lot in that piece. It's broken up between, my sort of my reaction self, both as father and as son, and then connecting it to, this brother that I brought attention to. And there's a line there about Brownfield Copeland. I don't know if anyone's read the book, The Third Life of Strange Copeland. I believe that's the title of Alice Walker's book. But Brownfield Copeland's a character. He actually shoots his spouse in that book. And the whole book is Alice Walker's debut. The whole book is Alice Walker looking into her community and seeing, the deficits, and then seeing what the deficits create in the home, specifically between Black men and families. So um, these connections, right? This spectrum. So I wanna start off first by, kind of bringing the audience into, what public health is, and then how it relates to Black communities specifically. Like, why should, Black folks give a damn about like public health, and then public, health professionals? Your name is Brothers in Public Health, so it's like obviously you're responding to, a cultural need. So I wanna give, each of you, or how many of you, an opportunity to kind of, like, what is public health, and why is it important to us?
I
Young
guess
dudes. Oh,
I'll kind of hop in. I feel like every time I answer that question, it's a different response, but I feel like the simplest way to put it is kind of like it's um it's how we impact where we eat, where we sleep, where we play. Um, yeah, it's just those are the those are the general areas in which public health is designed to impact, but the industry, I feel like itself encompasses so much more. A lot of people, when they think of health, they think of healthcare and like in a clinical perspective, but public health attempts to explore that there's so much more that impacts our overall well-being. There's a spiritual component, there's an emotional component, there's a physical, obviously, component, and that's what public health is.
And
But
and I was
go
oh
ahead,
my bad, bro.
no worries.
Um and I would say to add on to that, to contextualize like public health for our community, when we think about just, the Black community, but then the diaspora more broadly, as well, right? Public health is really like the application, the study, of intentionally looking at, to Miles' point, all of those things that have happened historically, and also present day. in our communities that impact our health, right? So if we think about zoning policies, a lot of people know about redlining now. It's becoming more of a normalized household term now, right? We know that redlining is something that led to the depreciation of many neighborhoods, predominantly black neighborhoods in the United States, which really led to a lot of ghettos being created, in those neighborhoods. And we know the environmental impact of growing up in places with less green space, in places where, you may have less security, you may have to worry about neighborhood violence. We know that neighborhood violence is something, right, that is predicated by poverty, right? And we know that poverty is generated by policy, right? So just even that breakdown of where we are, a lot of us in our community, we are naturally public health thinkers, or we kind of even see the world in a public health way, right? Because many of us kind of think historically, we even in this context of anger, right, and emotional mental health, we think about much longer periods of history. Obviously, we think about, transatlantic slave trade and slavery in the United States. We think about the Jim Crow era. If we look at it from a diaspora lens, we think about the impact of colonization on our brothers on the continent. And, a lot of times we see these parallels between pops being stressed on the continent, pops being stressed in the hood in the United States or somewhere in the UK. It's kind of these commonalities sometimes, unfortunately, amongst black households. And I think that all of that and understanding that can be explained by public health. And as brothers in public health, we're here to try to do more explaining, but also try to create more solutions so we can have impact in our communities. But that's public health.
I just want to add on to that. To me, public health is preventative medicine. This is like, the study, to me, it's the study of what were the things before the outcome that could have been put into place before, so we could change whatever the outcome of the person is. So whether that be sickness or health, I mean, sickness and health, death, life, things of this sort. So I want to say I really do like this piece that she wrote. It resonated with me, not as a father, but as a stepson and a son in general, dealing with who had experience with like domestic violence, things like this. So from my perspective, this is like really, really, really good. So like in this context for public health, I'm just thinking about, you know, what could have what could we have done to prevent this type of scenario, to prevent this type of two deaths, and to prevent, someone to not have a mother, you know? So that's what public health means to me. Like, how can we prevent, what type of medicine can we administer to prevent these type of outcomes and have a better type of, result?
So to me, yeah, like public health is the analyzing, the protecting and improving of the lives of our people, ourselves, our families, our communities, right? I really look at it as a, a lens to recoup our losses and to um, try to do better, right? When we think about public health from, the Black lens, right? There's so many issues that we might not have known about had we not looked at it through a health lens, right? When we talk about health disparities, right? When we talk about preventable differences in people's health situations, when we talk about the Black demographics, right? When we talk about, heart disease, when we talk about Black maternal health, when we talk about cancer, specific diseases, diabetes. We talk about um, what is it what we could do, right? It's analysis of all these problems, and this is our chance now to be able to try our best to propose policies to provide affordable health and try our best to achieve the best health outcomes. So public health, I think, is that machine. It's a lens. It's an opportunity, essentially.
I appreciate the reply from everyone, and I think that there's something I want to extract from from each of you. Um, with the piece itself, just trying to provide a bit of a microscope into the implications of like what encourages, this behavior, these reactions in the home, and even outside the home, but like in this case in the home. I think one thing for me, you do any kind of like anti-capitalist, study, you learn like about, you learn about, material dialectics, historical dialectics, like doing that analysis, that historical analysis. You've all kind of brought that up. One thing that I try to interrupt when I can is like, respectability politic, where it's like, there are presumptions about how people should behave, but more so like there's expectations about, you know, um the amount of responsibility people do have. And it's not saying that, cats are not responsible for their actions, but there's to say that there should be a level of like top-down analysis of like, here are the trickle-down effects of like policy, because it all starts with policy. Like the stuff isn't just happening out of thin air. But I think a lot of times, policy discussions are so far from like community discussions. Um, so in your opinions, especially about like black men, black fathers in particular, and like access to like support. What do you feel like are like the policy barriers? Like, what are the things that you all talk about? Like, okay, this is like specifically affecting folks' ability to get the care that they need to, you know, be less of what they are in the home or to be more of what they can be in the home.
So I'm gonna start from a historic perspective on, I think, how we have gotten the some of the behaviors and social um uh from a public health perspective kind of illnesses, how we have kind of gotten them normalized from a policy perspective. So I think I'm gonna start from there, and I think people may kind of add on to like where what we can do now. So I think if we look at like just policy historically in the United States and how it relates to black families, right? It's rooted in slavery, right? Which is rooted in capitalism, right? Um, we know that, there were common practices on plantations, which essentially were businesses to intentionally separate families, to divide and be divisive, on black families. And I think that, when we look at that kind of historical, part and kind of fast forward to Jim Crow and housing policy, I only speak about this because I work in St. Louis. There was a historic housing project called the Pruitt-Igoe housing houses. The same dude who designed the World Trade Center actually designed these housing projects, one of the largest housing complexes in the United States American history. And it was supposed to be this marvel place for all of these poor black folks in St. Louis that have been living historically for generations in pretty decrepit neighborhoods, with the exception of a few kind of black Wall Street type areas. So in Pruitt-Igoe, for a family to qualify for housing, right, for a housing unit, if the father had a job, the father was not allowed to live with the family. And that was the policy. So if you were a nuclear family, mom and a dad, kids had the father in their life, but if the father worked, well, then you don't qualify for housing. So a lot of times families would sacrifice, have the father live in another city, another town, out of state sometimes, just to be able to get housing. Because, back in the day, we're talking 40s, 50s, 60s. It's, a lot of, big families, 10, 15 people. My pop had like 14 siblings. So it's like, I was watching this documentary and they were interviewing all these old folks who grew up in this housing projects, and they would talk about how the social workers would knock on the door and do an inspection. And sometimes, like the dad, if the dad was there, they would have to hide the father, or he had to jump out a window because if the social worker found that, oh, there's a man living in the home with your family, then and he works. All right, well, we gonna take away your housing. What type of, excuse my language, demonic, crazy policy is that to put on the people, right? But y'all, I'm also watching this documentary. I'm like, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me the stereotype that I grew up with in 1995, that black fathers just leave the home, was actually generated by a policy decision. Like this was something that was a real law that could impact people's ability to get housing, which is a critical social determinant of health, right? So we think about how wicked a lot of this stuff is. That's just housing, right? We could look at child support policy. We could look at welfare policy. We could see that there's still some, and sometimes it's a hard conversation to have, because obviously there's a huge left, and not even left, just progressive, more, left leaning side in support for welfare and these things like that. But realistically, if we being honest, it's like some of the policy that we still have that we're still enacting today that perpetuates some of these issues. Like the roots was in Jim Crow. The roots was in being divisive and actually breaking up our families. And sometimes I think, it's a privilege to access the information to have that and then apply that. So that's where I would just kind of start. Like there's this actual policy out there. I'm not as well versed with child support policy to be completely honest, but I have heard arguments against reform in certain states because of the type of situation that it does put individuals in, fathers who are trying to be responsible in some kind of ways. And so even in this story of Rajee Black, I feel like I've seen a few different things like stories like this. Unfortunately, where brothers also killing themselves as well. And so, I think it's some deep stuff that we really have to pick apart. But just from a policy perspective, going back and removing anything that has its roots in Jim Crow and actually trying to destroy the black family, because I think there are still things enacted to this day that we may not even know about.
Appreciate that. Anyone have any additional input or any response to Brother Winston put forward? I feel like you covered a lot of ground. You covered a lot of ground. Um, it's a thing for me that when I think about like films like Claudine or like Blue Collar, which I think do a good job of, and Blue Collar being the film with uh Rich Pryor, and of course Claudine, famously I think Diane Carroll and man, oh, I'm losing it. I'm losing it. I want to say Lawrence Fishburne. It's not Lawrence Fishburne. It is most certainly Darth Vader. Who is the voice of Darth Vader? James Earl Jones. There
Yeah,
it
you got it.
is. I got it. It came back to me. Both of those films, I think, do a good job of like, looking at and you see the policies that you're bringing up. I remember the famous scene, um, in Blue Collar, at least for me, much like you're saying, too many. It's not not enough kids in the home as compared to what they reported, but needing to like report that many kids in the home just to make sure that when doing their taxes or filing their taxes, they like get enough of a return to you know support the household. Then of course if folks come knocking. Um, and I remember Rich Pryor, saying a line like, like the only reason you're able to do this because you have power, right? And a lot of times, like it's a matter of power. We're having conversations about power, and the relationship between power and policy. Um, and so, any kind of like analysis around policy, I think is imperative when talking about like, behavior, imperative to talk about, emotional health, physical wellness and other things. Um, and so, you know, when it comes to your work and the work you all do uh around like policy education, because that's just something that's just like lacking in general, like people like knowing, okay, these are the things that affect me directly. Like I can name what the effect is. I can name that I'm mad because this, that, and the third. I can name that this, that, and the third is like encouraging, or you know I'm becoming more symptomatic if I have like, mental health, a mental health diagnosis because of like all of these things happening around me. Um, but I don't know what the hell is happening. I don't know what the hell is happening like when it comes to like the things that affect me. So in policy education, like what does that look like for you all? Or if it's something that is lacking, like what do you like, imagine it can be um when, engaging community? And anyone can, get us started.
Y'all cut me off. Don't have me up here just talking the entire time. And also, I just want to say, Donnie, we are not as informed. So you gave us some game, Claudine and Blue Collar, some
Yeah, check those
classics.
out.
Yeah, I never heard them joints, so that I just Googled them. Like, oh wow, like a
Yeah,
Richard
check
Pryor movie.
check those out. We should
It's
do a
but
Brothers in Public Health movie night. Hey.
that's beautiful, but not for real because this is those are the type of movies that we definitely, they're not showing up in the algorithm. You know what I'm saying? So like the fact that we got those out of this conversation, I'm gonna definitely check this out. Like I know who Richard Pryor is, so it's like why don't I know about this movie? But anyway, so I feel like so realistically, so not necessarily moving away from the policy education discussion because I'm gonna be real, like even in our type of role, like when we engage in the community, because right now we kind of engage with our demographic of brothers, if I'm being completely honest, we've had some opportunities locally to do things with other people in a few cities, like other older folks and folks at churches and things like that, popped up to different health fairs and engage folks. But I don't know if we would even really take an approach of trying to educate people on certain policies, right? Because the reality is for that, we need advocacy. There's a voting connection there to actually, like getting the policy enacted that you want, buying in, getting, representatives to buy into certain things. And that's a very broad discussion. I really feel like in terms of direct solution, we just had a kickback session like a few weeks ago talking about just mental health access and mental health therapy, right? And many of us talked about just like the reality of not having access until you have a good job. You know what I'm saying? Or you have a job that can at least provide you those benefits, or even if it's a school counselor, if you're in school, right? And so that would be that's how I would kind of shift it. It's like um, because I think we all could talk about, I'm not a father, but I'm a married man. And I reflect on my dad all the time and how, he influenced me and raised me. It's even crazy. I do want to address in the poem the second line when daddy put his fist through the wall. So I've seen my father really put his fist through the wall. I put my fist through the wall. It's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy. And like, I remember that when I did it and my wife called me out on it, like, I really thought it was normal because I seen my pop do it. So you know what I'm saying? Like, and I just in terms of it's like a normal form of expression, like that shit happens. Like I'll drywall it up, but it's like no, it's actually it's extremely problematic. So in that moment, what could I have benefited from the most? Well, therapy, uh, techniques on how to regulate my emotions, um, how to better express myself, conversations with other men on how do I show up and how do I mitigate coming across as frustrated and what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate, right? Because that moment really actually traumatized my partner, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I would kind of recommend. Like the immediate thing is you know do you have access? And if you have a job and they ain't providing benefits, well, could you look and asking them to provide benefits? But a lot of times we have jobs they may do provide benefits. It may be a helpline, it may not be anything crazy, but it still may be something just to get you on that path and on that journey. So I think that's where we will probably try to push people towards. And then people are our demographic. There's a bunch of social media accounts and stuff that promote these kinds of things, but definitely help in terms of just how you regulate your emotions. So that's what I would say. Y'all, I don't know if y'all have anything to add on to that, but yeah.
It's crazy. I thought I would have a lot to say during this episode, but I'm just soaking in all the information today. I'm not even really trying to. I only got my thinking cap on, just trying to talk. I'm just more so just trying to take in everything. You know what I'm saying? But as far as what Winston was talking about, I agree with what you're saying. I feel like even like for example, like when you talked about seeing your father put a hole through the wall, that just reminded me of my own experiences and just just thinking things that I went through were regular, were normal. And then growing up, it's just like you gotta have other people out you on things and being like, no, this is not normal. So it's more like I'm also just thinking about that perspective of like, people from the sidelines needing therapy as well, needing this mental health support to like really understand what is normal and what is not, and what are things that they can fix upon themselves before they start their own family, before they start their own relationships and affect others. Because it seems like in regards to like the policy with the Pruitt housing and things like this, is like black men need to learn how to, you know, be a positive impact because it's just like we didn't have that ourselves, and then we're given a baton with no type of leadership or not that most ideal type of conditions, you know. So we really gotta, really do our best at this thing.
I think Winston, you made a point that my mind immediately went to when Donnie, when you were sharing the story about the young man, unfortunately, that murdered his partner and child. Like you said, so right, be, being able to understand how to regulate yourself, regulate your stress, um, and it's important to have to surround yourself with people who are willing to check you. Like, a lot of the time, in in poor communities, just us men in general, we hang out with our bros all the time, our men, our bros, whatever you want to call them. But unfortunately, sometimes they aren't the best influence. And so if you all are not checking each other, they're allowing certain behaviors to continue to exist and unfortunately impact the lives of others. Um, and unfortunately, if you are dating someone and, certain things that you do with your bros, like they've never brought it to your attention, like, hey man, like you should chill out a little bit. That's a little too much. You just acting like the same way with your partner is gonna cause some trouble. Um, but even if just not your bros, like yeah, like obviously we know, unfortunately, a lot of men of color don't have of a father figure in their lives, and so that obviously makes a huge impact in our development and our ability to um, speak to our women and girls we deal with. So it's just really sad, but I feel like from a policy perspective, I was thinking about like my day to day. But I'm also trying to think and dial back from think of it from the organization perspective. But I know a couple of times when I've done some outreach, I'm based in the DMV area, so I work for the DC government. And I have the luxury, the privilege, and the honor of serving for the district government. And with a public health perspective, public health lens, like I'm always wanting to give back and support and educate. Um, but it's unfortunate sometimes that um, sometimes the community members that we deal with don't see you as an advocate. They see you as the enemy, even though you look just like them. And it's really hard to explain how things that you're doing are to support them. And they're not really willing to have a listening ear. Um, so a lot of times, even in general, like in public health, a lot of times we have to focus our efforts on prevention. Um, and I'm sorry, not prevention, but uh, like taking care of the aftermath. And I hate having to like do that what type of work. I'd rather just avoid it at all costs. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what I was thinking.
Miles, I gotta respond to you because you actually made me say. I think you were saying a lot of great stuff, bro. So I feel like the conversation. So number one, you said like having your friends check you, and I just I'll be 30 this year, and I'm gonna be real like when I just think about my life as a man, when I think about my life as a black man, it's like, yeah, I've crashed out, but I've seen like I've seen anybody I know, like they've crashed out in a certain point at their life just because of something that they was going through, right? Like just something has happened, right? No matter how much responsibility they carried, no matter how cool you thought they was, like something has happened. And I definitely have been in, situations as an older younger man, like having to check my bros or just having to take a step back if I see like somebody kind of going in a way where I know it's like, yo, it's detrimental to your family. I've tried to say something, but I can't. But ever since I lost my pop and dealt with all that, I've definitely tried to embrace like the word bro and really being just like more vulnerable on some cool time, like just like easily vulnerable, just checking in, lending an ear. And that's one of the things I think we've been able to do through Brothers in Public Health. We have kickback sessions or just like, different, virtual meetups. And we just bring bros together to talk about everything that's going on in society, but also talk about things that may be going on individually in their life. And I think it's just powerful. And a lot of times the conversation is prevention. And I feel like that specifically because, Myles, to your point, like working and sometimes feeling like the community don't look at you as like support. I'm gonna be real, like we also probably got people in our life that we don't really care that much for. You know what I'm saying? It's probably some bro, I know I got some in-laws, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, you know what I mean? No, but like what I've learned to do though, realistically, is like embrace every single, opportunity I have to actually love those brothers. You know what I'm saying? So when I go down to Alabama, you feel me? Like it's like, that's like my fam. And then when we have conversations where it's like they don't want to hear my public health brain, it's like no, like I'm gonna really stand here and challenge you on this right now, but in a way like that's cool, and I embrace it because I feel like that's a part of our work as well, bro. We have a lens, we have experience, we're in spaces, we have access to the things that we know impact our health. So even when it seems like they kind of challenging us, it's like I still feel like the conversation is prevention. Like I'm gonna still say this even though I know you don't think I know what I'm talking about or you don't understand kind of like what I do. So I just wanted to respond to that, bro, because you started making me think about that. So it's important for us to still be together, be in community.
I
Speaking
mean,
of community,
oh, go
Oh,
ahead. Go ahead.
Mahir, you went off mute a couple times, so
Yeah,
give you the
so
give you the floor.
my apologies. So, just with all due respect to the question, do you think you could reframe the question so that's a little bit more digestible? Maybe we could benefit from just a maybe shorter framework to just kind of maybe address it more. Just speaking on behalf of myself, address it more effectively.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I mean, the question was about like in terms of like educating the community about, policy and the policies that are immediately affecting them. Which is essentially the question, like, well, how do you see that as like in your role? Like, do you see that as something that is important, or you see that as something that you're already doing? You see that as something that needs to be innovated towards in public health care or in public health, like more education around policy. So that was the question. But I actually do want to veer from it a bit because there's a lot of things that have been brought up that I want to kind of pinpoint. And I think, this happens a lot on this program. But it's good conversation. You all saying some great things that I want to kind of like, put a hook into. And the thing about community and community response is important to me. Because, working in HIV prevention, I relate to, okay, that there's a hesitance. And then of course remember like a lot of the, reactions to, going back all the way to like, the pandemic, quarantining, and the move towards encouraging communities to be vaccinated. There was obviously that reply, and I always go back to home, like Toni Morrison's Home. In that book, a big part of it is community being the first source, not just of information but of knowledge, where it's okay, these things have happened to us, and so we have this healthy skepticism of not just like health agencies but like government health agencies, because I mean I think there's still this, there's a I think there's not even an underline but like a like an overt sort of like big brother kind of surveillance of like black communities that comes from like healthcare, that comes from, any type of, the nonprofit industrial complex, whatever have you. Um, and I think that plays a big role where it's okay, and not in the way of like, how cats would just like throw Tuskegee out there when ain't got nothing else. It's just like, well, Tuskegee, and that's it. But in like, okay, I've had this experience in the hospital, or like almost lost, my baby mother in the hospital, or my kid got misdiagnosed at school, and so now I got X, Y, and Z, or like I can't get gender affirming care because blah blah blah. So it's like, why should I trust you? Want to kind of like, move the conversation towards, which is like, when it comes to community response to like you said, preventative, education, in any area of public health, and especially around like, Black men who like, traditionally, and I want to say the narrative, the mythos is that brothers, are resistant to, health care and, being consistent with health care. Um, what are the um what are the ways in which you all see like, okay, this is what more we should be doing to encourage our communities to, to engage preventative healthcare measures, to engage, other healthcare measures that are protective. What are the other things that, because there's always we have to do more. We just have to do more given, like you said, the historical implications of, of government intervention in our communities, going back, like you said, Winston, go back to slavery. So what are some areas you feel like, okay, these are the things we can kind of like work on to like bring the community to a place where they can advocate for themselves in their own healthcare, in their own kind of like pursuit of, greater health, and especially around like men. Um, so, we'll see how open the floor.
So speaking as a community health worker, I believe the community health worker pathway has been a very essential means to accessing and getting through to our people. When you're on the floor, we're governments, nonprofits, all these organizations are using community health workers because they recognize that they have lost a lot of their trust and don't necessarily have the access to reach a lot of Black and Brown communities anymore. You know what I mean? We're living in times where, advertising, marketing, nothing like that helps anymore because, unless you've gotten a hold of someone on the ground, someone that's, there, you're not going to reach, Black people. So, now we have community health workers that are, involved in creating community-based programs, right? Are reaching people with basic needs, right? When we have community fairs, outreach programs that are addressing the first and foremost needs, creating referral programs, right? Sitting down with, other brothers and sisters, getting on their laptops, on their phones, saying, "What is it that you need, my brother, my sister? Like, how can I help you?" You know what I mean? And you got someone and representation, and trust are very are crucial components to removing these obstacles out the way, out the road, right? When you start, addressing that, I think it definitely provides, more ways to address these issues, right? And to get Black people, brown people to open up and to be able to receive that kind of care, to be put on game to resources that they were never aware of in the first place. Like, I mean, my experience, it's mind-boggling, the amount of things that, my communities were just unaware of, the amount of things that they've been shut out from, you know what I mean? So when we have, I think, in my case, particularly, I'm just advocating, as a community health worker, people that not that don't necessarily even have the all the education and the best of backgrounds, right? When you get people started from the ground and start training, advocates, right? Many of us have been advocates, before we even realized we were advocates, right? For family members in the hospital, right? In school, right? When, our parents necessarily weren't filling out all these forms and we're the ones filling out their forms and forging their signatures, for ourselves. Advocacy, recognizing need has always been a really good place to start. And once we were able to, identify that, we'll really be able to tackle these structural, obstacles and really get, the access to resources and access to, prevention programs that we really do need. So,
I need to say something to add on to this. Um, there's a line from this from your passage that says, don't push me because I'm close to a bottle of gin and a 44 special. And what that speaks to me because, people, because we don't have therapy as accessible as we may want it to, what is accessible is liquor stores, smoke shops, things of this sort. And to me, what that means is that this is a cry for help, you know? And that cry for help, we need to provide a type of innovation to our community that allows people to have a cry for help that will be beneficial. So, I think one of the ways to advocate for people is to give them a platform to speak up for themselves. So to me, that means like, for example, in our communities, like we know our community is built up well, from me being from Philly, I know my community is built up of like churches, recreation centers, poppy stores, or like corner stores, and smoke shops and liquor stores. So with that being said, it's like we got to make, you know, these programs and these resources as accessible as a liquor store is on the corner. You know, like we got to make it so prominent that someone can be like, okay, I got two choices to make. I can either go to the liquor store or I can go to this service that I know is going to help me mentally and provide better counseling for myself and my family. That's how I'm looking at it. As like we got to change this narrative of like this cry for help. How can we, make that possible for these people? Um, yeah, that's me.
Yo, so I'm a uh keep it a bean like so I feel like Ethan, I was definitely there with you. There's a bunch of different national surveys. Who knows under this administration what happens with these surveys, but we all studied these in our undergrad or graduate programs. Risk youth assessment or whatever it's called, BR if I can't remember the acronyms, but they evaluate the level of substance abuse or use in a home. I used it for my dissertation, actually kind of looking at the predictors of depression amongst adults who use marijuana to see if there was correlations between depression and marijuana use amongst African American and Hispanic men. But I think in terms of trust, you know, I'm gonna be real. Like to Ethan's point, right? Like some communities you have yoga, Pilates, wellness studios. Other communities you have liquor stores, poppy stores, smoke shop, whatever. And it's like I mean, we have to be able to identify and understand what we need. We need a platform, but the reality is we also have to be like real about how we coping right now. And we have to have real conversations about what those coping mechanisms look like right now, which I think is tough because all these forms of stuff, whether it is therapy, you still got to pay. It's still capitalism at the end of the day. You still got to depend on the system at the end of the day, right? And in my position, because I work for a major hospital, Miles, I see you, so I'm gonna shut up in like a second. But in my position, I work in a hospital based out of St. Louis, so it is a chocolate city, it's a black city, a lot of historic inequities within St. Louis. And it's a balance. Like, I have to sometimes get on the phone and talk to people who have lost their loved ones at our hospital and still convince them to come to the meeting. You know what I'm saying? Because their voice needs to be heard. And that could be a hard thing because they're like, no, that healthcare system killed my daughter, like, or killed my husband. Like, why would I wanna, like trust y'all, right? And that's real. And had to tell the physicians, like, yo, you got patients that really feel like you want to kill them. And I've had physicians cry, they little guilty tears in front of me and everything. And so I think it's a tough one because it's all rooted in capitalism at the end of the day. We got to be on the inside of the system. Our people got to lean in and trust, but we also got to be able to be super vulnerable. But Miles, I'm going to toss it to you.
You made a lot of great points. And there was something like something about what you said that like triggered this thought, but it's like I don't want to make it, I don't want to sound inconsiderate in any way, but I think it's the truth in some instances if you think about it, depending on how you look at it. So like um I think like you were mentioning like being able to recognize like these certain coping mechanisms exist, whether it be positive or negative coping mechanisms. And it's like comes down to you making that active decision. Are you going to accept or decline? So the word that came to my mind was having discipline. And I think having discipline can help us avoid negative things in our life. It can also help us pay attention to the things that can um, positively impact our lives, especially when it comes to understanding policy. I think sometimes like you as an individual, you have to have the desire, the discipline to listen and understand and educate yourself. If you're not, then all the work that advocates are doing is going in one ear, not the other. Even though you have a valid point, you're affected, you're stressed, you're upset, like things have impacted you. But if you don't have the discipline to really synthesize the information and and really understand all the factors that come into play, then you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. Um, and you have to like it's one thing to understand. Sorry for the background noise. I don't know if you guys hear that. Um, it's one thing to understand like a certain policy, right? But all the external like environmental factors that also come into play, you have to pay attention to those as well. Um, and like I'm trying to think of an example. Like the one thing that comes to my mind is like the opioid crisis and um like understanding how like their s- states across states in the US are receiving funds to sort of fight the crisis. But it's like there's there's a there's checks and balances. There's an accounting process to how these jurisdictions can spend their money, and they have to have like uh, data-driven evidence before they can make any sort of executive decision on those funds. And some places, which is great, they have public input in these executive decisions that they're making. But sometimes if the community members aren't understanding and present and really understanding like what is and what isn't there, even though it is upsetting, like people are still dying, if you're not taking the time to really understand like what is preventing certain actions from taking place, then your criticism and your with respect, but like your anger is not going to be uh received, essentially. That's what I'm trying to say. Um, but it's like a double-edged sword because like even the governmental agencies also struggle themselves. Like they're not perfect either, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of internal factors that are preventing decisions that need to be made from actually happening. Um, so it's like everyone has to get themselves together. Like the public sector has to be disciplined as well as at the individual level. So
I I I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying 100%. Two key words that's coming to my head when you speak is sustainability and consistency. I think about consistency when, for example, for many years since like the 1960s and above, or even before that, um, you know, nicotine was pushed. Like I'm talking about pushed through the media, pushed through things like this. So and same thing with alcohol. Like it's such a normalized thing that over the years you're talking about people who are growing up that are used to this thing. Like their discipline is actually rooted in alcoholism and in you know nicotine addictions. And the saying you can't teach a dog new tricks, but you can, but it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. um it's like you we got to understand that we need consistency and also availability. Same thing for like people that want to eat healthy. If I want to eat healthy right now, I have to like leave my neighborhood to go to a grocery store that has healthy options. So I go to the grocery store right now, I'm gonna see tasty cakes, soda, things like this. I'm not gonna see anything that's like very like healthy for me to eat. So what I understand what you're saying. So my solution to that problem is to create a sustainable option. 'Cause I understand that these policies, these programs cost money. So we can develop these type of programs that is like kind of already in the community that we're not highlighting. Like, for example, you know, although we have liquor stores and things like this, we also have churches and rec centers. If we're able to utilize the churches, the mosques, the masjids, the rec centers, things like this, we can be able to, cooperate with religious leaders and also just like the youth advocates to like have put people to work in those avenues to be able to provide a sustainable and also more available option for people to turn to when times get rough. So same thing when I was saying like when I go to the poppy store and I want something healthy to eat. If like if I was able to see like more healthy options in my poppy store to get food, you know, it might take like 5 or 6 store runs to basically to finally be like, okay, I don't want to eat chips this time. I want to have something more healthy. But that consistency and also having the sustainability to like have something that's available, it takes time, just like how it took time for them to, you know, give us these rooted problems that we're trying to break. So, we gotta understand like this isn't just something that's going to happen overnight, but it's going to take time. So, but I completely understand what you're saying. Discipline is definitely, that answer, but it's going to take time. And I think, to help make it smooth, it will take consistency and sustainability.
No, there was a lot of great points brought up. I think there's a lot of things that like one put toss hooks into what I see running with 20 minutes left at least. My goal was 130. I'm gonna do my best. There was a few things, and I know that Mahir could not stay the entirety of the time. But I actually did want to kind of extract something that he brought up about like we've been our own advocates, in various kind of capacities without kind of knowing it, whether it be being kind of forced in that position or just kind of out of necessity. We talk about empowerment. I think a lot of times that we have the experience of being our advocates, or being the advocates of family without knowing that's what we are. And I just wanted to kind of point that out because I think a lot of people kind of forget like, you're well equipped to advocate for your family, for yourself because you've been doing it. The conditions which encourage you to do that, would force you to do that, may not have been ideal, and there might even be some trauma surrounding it. But like the toolkit is there. Um, and I think that's important. I think that discipline is very interesting to me because you're absolutely right. There is a level of discipline which is required. I think just kind of across the board. Um, I think I wonder about you know the road to discipline and the barriers kind of like in front of that. And what do we do in, capacities of like public health workers or healthcare workers? What do we do about that? Especially in institutions which perpetuate, particular barriers. Because I think about the fact was like, and I always am clear to folks like there's nothing like exceptional about the conditions of Black folks outside of like, the fact that, we were enslaved and like this is why, we're in the position that we are now. But everybody is dealing with the same sort of like, brunt of capitalist violence. Like everybody has, access to the same fast foods, the same propaganda around, addictive of substances. Everyone has sort of their barriers to you look at what's like just insurance. Like really, if you're not in that 1%, I don't really care where you are. Like just, I think it was I can't remember her name. But there's a cultural commentator that said, like, I make decent money, but like I am like one crisis away from being in the hole. And what that means, when it comes to like health insurance, the fact that it's like, folks fought very hard for like the Obama administration like push a public option. We still didn't get that, and so like the restrictions of Obamacare, which I'm on, and I experience that year after year after year. It's like the restrictions of this doing what I need to do for myself and my child, but like these are such restrictive programs. Um, so like I think about discipline as something like everything like hierarchy of need. Like it's there, but there's so many things I feel like you have to go through to get to that. And I think empowerment is one thing. And the necessity of being empowered to know that, you have the propensity to be disciplined. Um, because I go back to like, there's a line in the poem I said, I was mad today, but I'm really just sad today. And I think that that's, there's so many like emotional wellness is a big thing, but I think about, that is like a barrier to like empowerment. Like I can't, like, there's nothing I can do. Like, every step I take, I'm being met with, this, that, and the third. And of course, the more intersections you sit at, right, it's like the more identities you have, that's going to increase. So, I was talking to, my trans brother Jaden in the last episode, we talk about gender affirming care. We talk about like, trans men who, are fathers and like having to move through, the world. Um, with those healthcare barriers. And that's an added layer, right? But it's like every step I take, there's something. It's like, okay, well, why not just give up? Um, and I mean, and it's very attractive. I can understand why. I've been there. We've all been there. Um, so as we kind of like move into a close, hopefully, because there's some other things I do want to tap into. Um, when it comes to like empowering people, given all of the material, I mean, we get it, like it's material conditions, it's capitalism, it's colonization, it's how it relates to our material conditions. Like we know that. Still, we gotta live. So, without getting super duper radical about it, that's another episode. Within our capacities as public health workers, public health professionals, how do we empower people? Like, hey, you are worth like the discipline to, keep with, a healthcare routine, to keep with like, your doctor's appointments, to keep with, your health and wellness. How do we empower people to like get to that place of discipline?
So, for me, definitely, this is not radical at all. Some people may think this is corny. I always go back to the culture. And I think empowerment, it's interesting because I think we have, Donnie, you as a single father, Miles has a partner, with his. I had the benefit of having both of my parents in the household. Ethan, I believe you had the benefit of having both of your parents in the household too, or set of parents. But like, I feel like my pop really modeled in ways what to do and what not to do. But I think by him being there, he empowered me in certain ways because there's definitely positive traits that I took from him. Even though I can remember him punching a hole through the wall. He was also an educator, right? And he punched a hole through the wall because somebody put their hands on me. So there's context, for the story. Somebody that, was not supposed to put their hands on me. But he was an educator. And like I remember he would tell me, you know, uh, if you get caught fighting in school, because I went to school downtown Philly, he was like, it's an assault charge immediately. Like they're not even playing with you. There's not no, they will call the cops and it's over. So, there's no excuse for you ever to put your hands on anybody. So, like, that's just him empowering me through knowledge. Like, damn, okay, like I have the ability to handle situations in different ways. Now, granted, growing up in a city like Philadelphia, you're gonna rumble once or twice. It's like, it's gonna happen. But, like, for the most part, I was already a 14, 15-year old knowing that the ramifications of trying to express my violence may end up in me dying. Period. Like that's you just don't know who has what. You don't know what's gonna happen. You don't know who might want to get their lick back on you. So, it's like I try to hold us all to a certain standard. I think we brilliant. I'm gonna be corny. Like we all have the potential to be Uncle Phil. Not that we want to be that, but in the capitalist, kind of like worldview that we sticking here to your question, like within all this, it's not revolutionary. I think we gotta hold ourselves to a high standard. You know what I'm saying? I learned through all of my bros that have kids, and one of my closest friends has two boys, and I'm always asking him just about, like his journey and where he's at and his lens and how he's developing them. And we hold each other accountable. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a father, but even like his son like anime. I was an anime kid back in the day, something that a lot of black boys couldn't express. If you was from a certain generation, you get clowned. You had to be a closet anime fan. That's a real thing out there, y'all. Like that really was a thing. So he hit me up like, "Yo, my son's starting to like anime. Like I'm trying to veer him off for that." I'm like, "Nah, bro. There's a lot of values in a lot of those shows. A lot more deeper character development values than a lot of the American stuff that he'll see. So." Here's a list. Let me put you on game to a few things you probably want to watch with him. You feel me? Empowerment, right? You know what I'm saying? Like just basic examples of how we really hold ourselves to a higher standard. Because I want to be a great father. I want to be, lucky enough one day to, have a family and people to be able to look at me as if I'm a provider in a positive way. We know the negative things that come with it. I've dealt with the pressure. I've gone to therapy for just being a black man, all that. But I'm empowered by just seeing other brothers do their thing, learning from other brothers, and just challenging and exchanging with each other. I think that's the easiest way, and not shitting on each other. Like you used the word mythos earlier, Donnie, when you're just speaking about some things. Like let those things be myths, because I know too many brilliant black men that are doing the best that they can compared to the opposite. It's like we all know, like we all are gonna have like maybe the opposite one or two in our lives, because unfortunately, as black men, we know the situations that we go through. But I got too many people that's trying to do the right thing, and especially in our generation. And I'm just of the belief it gets greater later, and so it's not revolutionary, it's not radical. Just continue to hold ourselves to a high standard, and there's no problem with doing that. So that's how I see that.
I had to step away, but I came back to, a good extension of the conversation. So I figured out a way to keep that in there. Um,
If I could also add just to that also, because it's like I said, we need to have more discipline, but it's like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm inconsiderate because it's like at the same time, why, like at the core of it, why do we as people of color, why are we so um like at our wits' end? Obviously, it's just the structure of racism, it's all these things that are against us. So it's like I don't got like I'm at a loss for words when I really think about these things. It's like you what do you expect a person to do when all these things are you're counted out like things are put up against you, your back is against the wall. So it's hard to like be calm and be silent and listen, even though like there might be folks out there who have your best intention at heart. Um, I don't know, man. It's like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, trying to get your point across sometimes or get help. Because you have to speak up. Or like you've been hurt for so long. So, or you don't have you haven't been given the proper techniques. You don't have like mentors in place that have sort of shown you the way of how to get your point across in certain rooms.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It's like, so another word of the day will be proximity. We know what is around us and what's in our environment, and it's just simple as, like you said, when our back's against the wall, and we're going to resort to what we know. We're going to resort to examples that were practiced, in front of us, because that's all we know. We don't really understand. Like we hear, oh, do this and do that, express yourself, this and the third, and we're just like, well, how do we do that? And we just go to our visual learning and our memories, and we're like, okay, this is what I know, and this is what I would do. So, proximity is exactly what that is. And I think, if we're able to put, just throw some of these positives into the environment, so people can have a wider spectrum of expression and coping and things like this, it will definitely make a difference in the long run.
I certainly agree. And it's not funny, but like my last two questions as we wrap up, are about everything that's being brought up. I mean, about proximity and about feeling like your back's against the wall. And then what do we do? Um, thinking about the order I want to ask these questions, so so we get out of here decent time. But in terms of like proximity, and I think like historical proximity at that, right? I can't help but think about the Panthers. I can't help but think about like, other organizations that, figured what I feel like is the answer, which is like, okay, it has to be done in community, but it has to be done in community like with an intention that like that discipline, I feel was something that, the Panthers encourage, which is that like, hey, we'll give you your free breakfast program. But the part we don't talk about is like, but that's only if you come to our political education class. That's only if we'll do the sickle cell, we'll help, get the roaches out your place. That's only if you help pass out the papers. That's only if you do this and do that. So it's like encouraging people to be disciplined about like not just like their lives, but like being disciplined as neighbors and like supporting community while at the same time getting the services that they need. And I feel like, that's just a part of a long-standing tradition, just going back to, the antebellum South and even further. Like, you know, we have to do this together, or we have to do this together in a way that is supportive of one another. And I think that takes a level of discipline. Um, to be considerate of like your neighbor and like what their needs are. But then also as a community, like, what are the things that we need? Whether it be that political education, whether it be like, education about, whether it be health education, right? And all those kind of intertwine. Um, but even going back to what Mahir was saying about, being an advocate, I feel, or being an advocate. I mean, I think that speaks to you know the a spark to like what lights the fire towards like community organizations that do the work. And I think that's also something that I think that's very, I feel like, innovative about public health is that like public health gets to be done without it being sort of like institutional, right? You think about like somatic practitioners in communities. You think about like, those who cultivate community gardens. Community health workers that are just doing the work without being tied to an agency. I think about like doulas who are doing that just like as services. Like public health is something that gets to be done in communities. And for you all, like, I think that what you all doing is special because it's like, when we imagine futures, it's important, I feel like, to imagine outside of the framework of like the status quo. But in the status quo, much like the spook who said about the door, like we still get to like operate, within structures as not just advocate but activists for our communities. It's like you're bringing brothers into that, bringing brothers into the hospital systems, bringing brothers into the, into the community legislatures, bringing brothers into these spaces. Um, and so I think that's really important work. But I think also, and it's something, you and I talk about, Winston, like encouraging like brothers, to just go out and just do the work. Like you don't have to be in an agency to do the work. So like when it comes to like encouraging brothers to be like practitioners in their communities, to be like health advocates in their communities, when it comes to like hey, just do it. Um, what are your thoughts about that? Like, do you think that that's done enough? Do you think that we could do that more? What are some strategies that you think we could employ to like, hey, brother, like you got this skill set, if HIV education, for example, that's something I could just go out and do, you know, um, in my community. So like, what are some strategies, overall thoughts, but then, leading towards strategies. So Ethan.
Yeah, I think we can always do more. So it's a saying that's like it takes a village to raise a child. And like we're talking about a village. So what does it take to raise a village? It takes everybody. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like we we need to make public health a lifestyle and not just a profession. Public health needs to become something that everyone knows about. Just like how in my community, it's like more people that's knowing about Narcan distribution. So now, like people like me, people like my little brother, he knows how to do CPR, first aid. He knows how to put a tourniquet on. He's only 13 years old. He knows how to put Narcan through somebody's nose. Like we need everybody to know the tools and to be able to utilize them whenever possible because we're not I'm not going to be everywhere at once. Once is not going to be everywhere at once. So the best thing that we can do is impart knowledge into everybody in the community so they can help raise each other and empower each other and go from there. So that's how I feel about that. Like it's really it's like a lifestyle. It's not just, one and done solution. It's like we really need to like make this a part of ourselves. Because the society that we were raised in or that we brought up in was built to like bring us down. We got to really spend our whole life and generations upon from that to build us back up.
And just to kind of just pick back real quick, just so I bring this brother's name to the space, and there's so many others, but I always, in conversations about public health, I feel like I have to always evoke Mutulu Shakur, stepfather to Tupac Shakur, um, you know, political prisoner. He passed, for recently, but former political prisoner. Um, BLA, Black Panther, all that, and it's like, that's the ethos, right? His ethos of philosophy of acupuncture is the backbone to like to acupuncture treatment in America today, like straight stolen. And that documentary Dope is Death kind of goes over that. But like that's the ethos, right? It's like we get to just do that. He just went into the community and was like, this is what I'm doing. And it, created so much of a stir. There's like, okay, this is the reply, right? It's like, we take you from the community. But, I feel like with enough people just doing it, that's how we build, that's how we build um that village, right? So I just wanted to piggyback off Ethan with that. But I appreciate that reply. But Winston, I saw you pop off me.
I did, but I know Miles did as well. But no, I would say Ethan said some great stuff. Public health is a lifestyle. Um, I just want to underscore something also, Donnie, you said one book and film I am familiar with, Spook Who Sat by the Door. That is imperative, actually completely influenced how I was going to show up in capitalistic America, right? How I was going to show up in corporate America from a healthcare perspective and how I was going to operate in the hospital. I mean, we all kind of undersold what we do in our day to day because I know all four of us and five of us, including me here, we do incredible work and we actually have these mentalities that in some ways are radicalized, you could say, because we think like this, but it's not radical because we just see it for what it is, right? So I just want to underscore quickly that I think Ethan was spitting some fire there. Just public health as a lifestyle. Again, people know about, redlining now in cities where the opioid crisis unfortunately has taken a toll. Narcan distribution, to Ethan's point, is, more normalized, right? I think mental health is something that is becoming a topic that's normalized. How do we make mental health access and mental health support, tangible and realistic is really like the next step. So I love that just and want to underpin that. Like, yeah, public health as a lifestyle. That's powerful, bro.
Yeah, my apologies, Miles. You did that. You went off mute first, so I want to get your thoughts.
No worries, no worries. I was just gonna tie it back to like our mission and our vision, which is increase like we're increasing this involvement of men of color in public health so that and the way we're doing that is to inform young men that hey, this is a viable career option. And even though you may not know what public health is, it's very vast. It could be wastewater management. It could be something you don't even think of. The industry has nothing, it doesn't have a label of public health on it, but in some way, some shape, form, or another, you are doing public health work. And that's just basically what we're trying to inform the public, the community about. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's just letting people understand like, hey, like you can serve your community doing public health, still doing things that you love. It don't have to be, we're not saying you gotta be a doctor. We're not saying you have to be in the clinic. No, like you can be doing some great hands-on work or hands-off work, but just think of things from a public health lens in serving and bettering your community. So that's all I gotta say.
No, I appreciate that. Listen, I think the work you brothers doing is incredible work. Because I mean, I know for myself, like being like the only brother, like in each of like my roles, no matter what the roles were, from mental health care, the HIV, prevention. Um, it doesn't even matter like what the spectrum of identity that like brother sat on. It's like, oh, I'm like one of the only ones here. Which means, what comes to the table is not what represents the community that I represent. So like having it like going back and forth with like in advertising, like, the present job, or at least where my contract was before I am now, it's like, okay, you if more than like 40% of your client base is black, why is the advertisement all white? Like all white men, as if all white men represent like the brunt of those affected by HIV, um, and AIDS. Like we know that it's not. We know that it's not. And luckily, like they changed that. But it's like just those little things get missed in public health. When you don't have people to say, like, hey, look, but I mean, but we know the game of it. That doesn't mean we still shouldn't be there to like, hey, that ain't gonna cut it. That ain't gonna fly. Um, but as we come to a close, my last kind of question, just kind of bring it back to fathers, men, black men, really anyone, right? Because I mean, like you think you brought up, like we're raising a village. I think it's important, it's imperative, as what the kind of like the piece kind of pulls out is like, can't nobody tell you nothing. Like, can't want to tell you nothing. Like, because of the swirling hurricane of like, you know, deficits in material conditions, it's like things get so things become like so just like I'm in my condition. I'm not moving from it. But I think what gets missed is that, and this is for anyone really, but like what gets missed is that it's like your health affects your child's health, affects your spouse's health, affects your mother's health, affects your neighbor's health. Um, and the many different ways in which like we categorize health. So it's like Rajee, for example, is okay, you know, you you remove two parents from the home, he murdered himself and his partner and baby mother. So three parents are gone. What is that doing to the children? What is that doing to the people who are taking care of the children? What is that doing to the generations of those children decide to have children? It's like your health affects everyone else's health. And despite the fact that, like, yeah, it's for lack of a better phrase, fucked up right now. We still have to sustain some level, as you were saying, Miles, some level of discipline, in our healthcare, because it's like if I lose it, well, I'm here by myself and my kid, you know. So to get that point across to cats, and we can speak specifically about, black men and, black fathers, and I like to be inclusive when I think about like black fathers, black men, it's like all black men, no matter kind of how they identify. But to get that point across around like, hey, your health affects your neighbor's health, affects your kid's health, affects your spouse's health, affects, how do we encourage, that thought that like, wait, I am not alone in this. I'm a part of a community. I'm a part of a village. I have to sustain, because if I don't sustain, you know, that creates a deficit in the health of the village. So how do we get that point across to brothers? It's kind of like our last bit of conversation here.
I think that is a cross. Like that message is it exists. I think it's just the pressure of knowing that you have all this responsibility, which causes more negative impacts to our health. I mean, could be wrong. You can look at it both ways, but that's what I think about. Because I mean, we know a lot of black men don't take care of their health. They don't go see their primary care physician. And sometimes it's for that reason that like they're so busy, they're so overwhelmed, they're so tired of like physically tired of having to take care of their responsibilities. I mean, well, that's one component. I can't say that happens for all, but um, as to why people don't go see a doctor or things like that. But I, but with that logic, I think it is best to continue to share the message of you matter, you are important, and making sure that we are also advocating for men to um like take a break, take some time off, do something therapeutic. Doesn't mean you have to go see a therapist, But, get a pedicure, bro. Ain't nothing wrong with getting a pedicure. I like getting pedicures, man. Get a massage or something. Do something that, like, typically, I mean, not typically, but it that how do I say it? Like, isn't always, I don't know how to say it. It's just do something for yourself that you wouldn't always do. I'll just put it that way.
Hey, Ethan, Hammers might have a connection issue there. Um,
Yeah, I will.
yeah.
Oh,
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think you hit the nail on the head, Miles, as we kind of wait for Ethan to kind of hop back on. Oh, there you go. All right,
there you
Ethan.
go.
I'm sorry. What lost me?
No, it's all good. I just want to say before you go, Ethan,
Yeah.
I was hitting the nail on the head. Like, when I say like to sustain, I think it's less about, like a kind of rigid, I need to keep myself together, and more about like, we need you here. So what do you need to do to be here? Whether that's reaching out to cats, whether that's seeing like what alternative forms of like therapy are available to me, whether that's just talking, whether that's, hey, maybe I should go for this food choice instead of this food choice in the case of being a food desert, it's like, you know, taking up some kind of like, oh, this person's talking about community gardens. Let me think about that because, that might be access for me to, learn how to take care of myself. Just whatever is inclusive in like reconsidering what it means to like show up, not just like as a provider, right? Not just as Nikki Giovanni said, not just as a camper, but like as a part of a community, fully formed, cared for, acknowledged, and seen, part of the community, like that kind of sustaining. So I appreciate you bringing that to the floor, Miles. Ethan.
Hey, I just want to say, I just want to tell Miles, like, I agree with what you're saying. It's definitely, we can definitely look at it both ways. From my personal experience as like as someone a bit younger, um, I I think empowerment is everything in the sense that uh it's for me. I understand it's a lot of people that like me empowering them will give them something to live for and give them like a sense of importance and type of like rooting in their own community. There's people that are lost to alcoholism and you know and things like this because they didn't from grieving them, it seemed like, so from grieving them, to me, it feels like they didn't feel enough love from like the brotherhood that they had in their lives, and like to knowing their importance. Like I've had friends who can vape their life away, and I tell them every time, like, listen, bro, like, stop doing that. Uh, it's not good for your health, and I don't want to lose you. You feel what I'm saying? So it's like some, like, I understand like empowerment can some like, or not empowerment, but it's like having like giving people like this type of like communication, like, oh, you're important, and we need you to do this, that, and third. It can definitely be a pressure, but for other people it can definitely be something that's empowering, that they can be like, okay, next time they pick up a vape, next time they try to drink or do something that's going to put their life in danger, like, hold up, it's people that care about me, people that I know their happiness actually depends on me, on my well-being, and that can actually make somebody feel good. It makes me feel good knowing that it's people that, if I get hurt today or tomorrow, they will not be happy. They will actually be sad. So it actually empowers me to like carry myself in a different way, and to always protect myself and my energy, and to always like do things that make me happy, because me being sad makes them sad. You know what I'm saying? So it's like this type of empowerment, I feel, like you said, it's a double-edged type of thing. But from like, I'm just giving my perspective of like how it's like very important to give young men this type of like, you're important and we need you.
Nah, beautifully put. Beautifully put. Um, yeah, any last thoughts before we kind of wrap up this conversation? Um, no, I think this was far more expansive than what I'd imagined, and I'm glad. I'm glad because I think that, in writing the piece, um, what I didn't want anyone to walk away with was like, me sort of like putting the blame isn't the word. but I didn't want anyone to like walk away, thinking that like, this is a piece about personal responsibility. I mean, it's a piece about personal responsibility, but like this is a piece about like what brings us here and what the consequences of us being here are. Um, and though yes, there are things that we need to do. There were things that Rajay needed to do. Like Rajay, just like the rest of us, are part of a larger story about like what has happened to us and why it has happened to us. But even though it has happened, we still need solutions. And I think that, you brothers, are a part of that solution. And so I'm thankful that, y'all decided to embark on this, this journey and conversation because it's that's necessary. Just like you said, Ethan, like, we're losing brothers. We're losing a lot of black men across a wide spectrum of like what encompasses being a black man is. Um, and I always look at it as like, hey, look, this is a fight. It's like we're all soldiers in it. And like, what does it mean to lose soldiers in the battlefield? Whether it be in the battlefield of healthcare, whether it be in the battlefield of love, whether it be in the battlefield of community building, relationship building, whatever have you, um, that we need one another. And so how do we keep one another here? And then how do we keep ourselves here? And, I think that, like I said, you all play a role that is novel. That is novel in the areas of like health and wellness. Because when I started out in public health, it was like I when I saw y'all pop up on IG, I was like, what the hell is Brothers in Public? And I showed up to me and I was like, ain't no way. There's no way. I would have never imagined. Um so yeah, once again, thank you. And if there's anything you want to plug, anything coming up, of course I'll ask, for the everyone's socials and everything, so people can, kind of see the work you do and follow. Was anything you wanna add before we wrap?
Is
Yeah.
this? Oh,
Go ahead. No, go ahead, bro. No, go ahead.
Rock, paper, scissors.
let's go. I'm just playing. Uh,
Man.
oh, is this going to be posted as a full video or is it going to be clipped up?
Yeah, it'd be clipped up, and then also it'll be put up as a full video and audio.
Okay,
Audio.
all good. I mean, just I guess plug for the nonprofit. We have some major news coming up real soon. I mean, we're doing a speaker series. We'll have a speaker. I think I don't want to say next week, but
June
sometime.
18th, Wednesday, June 18th,
Um,
7 p.m. Marissa McCool, public health burnout coach, join us to essentially just discuss different techniques and ways we can reduce burnout as public health professionals, but also as early careers, because we know we just had some graduating classes and things is kind of crazy right now with this current administration and just the attack on public health. So that's one thing we'll be doing June 18th, Wednesday. And you can find that on our social media pages, also on our website in terms of registration.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'll make sure to get that out to the people. Um, yeah,
Bros in
once
Public Health at everything. Oh, sorry, just at Bros at Brothers in Public Health on LinkedIn, IG, Facebook. But then our website is brosinpublichealth.org. So let y'all know that.
solid.
if you want to email us, you can reach us at hello@roseandpublichealth.org.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, once again, thank y'all for joining, and thank you for anyone listening, watching. I'm enjoying these conversations to a degree I didn't imagine I would. These are conversations I've been waiting to have. Um, and so, I'm enjoying, like I said, I'm enjoying the journey. So thank y'all, and see y'all next time.